Atlas has got fucking woke. They added fucking pronouns to SMT5. They're telling a story about fucking sex workers getting revenge. This game is a fuck button cock. Now, besides this hyperbolic presentation, I don't think that my assumption that this story will be about sex workers is entirely unjustified. Oh, and also women are cool, and I think them having autonomy over their bodies is cool, and sex workers are cool. Yay! Go women! Now, for those of you who didn't look up what quadristral means, it refers to a social class of women who perform prostitution for religious practices, also known as sacred prostitution. Now, unfortunately, in many of these cases, it doesn't seem like this was done with their consent, as this was like a social sort of thing that was expected upon women, so, not great. And as you may expect, they weren't treated the best despite that. This already tells us who a lot of these members will probably be, as there's only a couple of figures related to sacred prostitution that we can point out to. Especially since a lot of them seemingly are going to be the wives of Samael, which, he got around. In fact, I think it's interesting that they chose a red serpent in the portrayal of Lilith the Snake, especially since Samael has been portrayed as a red serpent. So I think this connection between this group of people and Samael, I think we can lock that in. Now, this proves that the story will be sort of centered around at least characters who are prostitutes, but, that doesn't prove that they'll be sympathetic towards them necessarily. Especially on the face of it, since, in the trailer, they're portrayed all scary and boogity, and look at that one. It's pretty freaky, I guess. And let's open our third eyes for a second and look at the Q&A.
本作で注目したアイデアは、蛇神と牛神の関係になります。蛇は竜にも同一視されるもので、世界各地で崇められて信仰を集めています。蛇は地域によっては人々の信仰を集めているのですが、別の地域では討伐されるというような伝承も残しています。で、その蛇を討伐するのが牛神と呼ばれる角を持つ神であるケースや、その眷属であるケースがあることに気づきました。本作はその討伐するものと討伐されるもの、その関係図をアトラス独自に解釈して描くことがベンジェンスの骨子となりました。実は新女神転生5前作では、牛神、角を持つ神の視点で世界を作るということに注目して、作った作品でした。ですのでベンジェンスでは蛇神、虐げられた側の復讐譚という視点で、お話を構成しております。
Now, this wording is really interesting, I think. I mean, why would they describe characters that might be purely villainous this way? I mean, he's calling them, victims and oppressed, and he's saying that this is the story from their perspective about getting revenge. I mean, this doesn't sound like a group of, purely villainous characters. I might even say that they might portray these characters sympathetically. Especially with, SMT's want to give the characters decisions. I mean, I don't think it's so far-fetched to say that you'll be given an option to, join them and help them with their revenge. Now, of course, we don't know what the revenge is. I mean, God is dead in SMT5, so who are they getting revenge on specifically? Maybe perhaps the world in sort of a vague way for, not helping them. We don't really know, but, I could see very easily that it might be justified, or maybe you can sort of coax them into a more reasonable position of, a specific entity and sort of just, grand destruction if that's what they're doing. I mean, we don't know yet. I don't think it's so far-fetched to say that they'll be portrayed sympathetically. In fact, this isn't the first time that Lilith in specific has been portrayed sympathetically. I mean, we do just look at SMT1. And I think it's interesting that there's a couple of scenes where she relents and stops her pursuit of the main character and just sort of lets him live his life, It's interesting that a character that has been portrayed the whole game is just kind of being an asshole to suddenly, be like, oh man, I give up. You can love whoever you want. Oh, and also for context, in SMT1, the main character is the reincarnation of Adam, and the heroine is Eve. So that's why she's obsessed with the MC. It's reincarnation. It's sort of like a Tensei, if you will. Even in SMT4, they sort of portray her sympathetically, or at least somewhat reasonably, give her dignity. Because you can make an argument that what she's doing is, not terribly bad. I mean, she's giving people knowledge. And even though some people kind of go psycho, Isabel is like definitely approving of this knowledge, sort of more nuanced than just sort of like, oh, it's all evil, I mean, Isabel with her monk is portrayed to being like a good aspect of Lilith's sharing of knowledge. So I don't think this more nuanced, like sympathetic approach is even necessarily new for the franchise, and I think it's fairly reasonable to say that this might be the direction they're going into. Now, going back to SMT1 for a second, I just want to point out that this is what Yuriko, who is Lilith's design looks like. Now let's go look at the new girl, who's Yoko Hiromine. Now isn't that interesting? Yuriko and Yoko. I think you know what I'm getting at. I think there's a very high chance that this new girl is the bearer of Lilith's knowledge. There's some pretty choice lines from the trailer that seem to point at this also.
So we have found it. The key to the resurrection.
You're not alone. If you want revenge, then I'll help you get it.
I think it's very likely that they'll be connected in some way. I mean, sort of like even simple storytelling. It's like, oh, this new group of people being related together. Like, that's not, totally out of the realm possibility, I don't think. Now, there's a little discrepancy with my theory of this character being the bearer of Lilith's knowledge. That specifically she would help them out, and not necessarily her being the bearer of knowledge. And that is specifically that she goes to Saint Marina's Girls' Academy, according to a Famitsu article. Now, of course, obviously, like a character coming from like a Christian school, it's like they're not going to be that fond of demons. But I think Saint Marina is interesting to choose. Marina famously helped a lot of women in her time, but there really isn't any stories of her defending prostitutes in specific. She did, however, famously defend a man who was accused of SA, so that's like kind of a tangible connection there, although it's not terribly strong. But I doubt this connection will be meaningless. I think there's a bridge that could be built there about this woman, who helped other women. It's like, it's not that terribly. You can see it if you squint, I think. Although there's also a story of her killing serpents, so it's like, I don't know. Maybe perhaps that'll be sort of like a conflict, like she was raised in this environment to, not be predisposed to helping demons, but then she moves about. At the very least, I do think there will be a connection there. And overall, I do think that these characters will be portrayed sympathetically, and I think the new main story will be sort of about this idea of sex workers and being, victimized and stuff. And possibly, hopefully, it'll be cool, and it'll be pro-women.